First of all, thank you all for putting up with my illness. The preaching from the balcony seems to be okay, but I would much prefer to be down here where I can see your faces. It also helps me to be down here on the front row. I learned over the past 2 weeks that if I'm up there, I can see my grandchildren. If I'm watching my grandchildren, I'm not paying attention to changing the slides, and I tend to get a little behind. So sometimes that's not always the computer's fault. Sometimes that's the operator error going on there. And when I'm down here, they're behind me, and it's not as distracting. But I love my grandchildren, and being able to see them is somewhat of a distraction when I'm up there. I hope you caught that tonight Bible study will be held in here, and part of that reason is we hope to be transitioning things to make things easier, better for this church. And part of that process right now is this week we're going to meet in here. Another reason we're going to meet in here tonight is because I want to be able to show you a video and some actual pictures that will go along with tonight's Bible study. And tonight's Bible study is actually an extension of this sermon today. So please try to come out tonight if at all possible. We will be meeting in here, and we will start about 6 o'clock. We will talk and fellowship for just a few minutes. Then I will introduce the message. I will go through the video and the slides, and then we will have a time of discussion about the subject and hopefully wrap it up about 7:30. So it could be a little earlier, it could be a little longer, depending on discussion participation. The sermon does come from the fig tree parable. Why the parable of the fig tree today? Who knows what next week happens? What happens next week? Who can tell me? Next weekend. You were given a clue in the announcements. What's that? Summer starts, that's right. Summer solstice. The summer officially begins by the alignment of the planets and the sun and the moon and the earth. That's how we measure the seasons. There's also meteorological spring, summer, fall, and winter. Those start at the first day of the month that it actually happens physically, with the distance of the sun and earth being apart or close, and the tilt of the axis of the earth. When you read this passage right here, you'll understand why we're doing this right now. Matthew 24:32 through 35 says, "Now learn the parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. So likewise, when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away." Jesus is talking about spring transitioning into summer. That's exactly what's happening in our world today. But what is a parable? Why did he choose this fig tree? Why did he choose the fig tree? Well, the fig tree is very important throughout the Old Testament and New Testament. It's a very important crop. We don't have a lot of fig trees around here, but there are varieties that will grow here. We can grow and harvest figs right here in Blacksburg, Virginia. We tend to think of them being in the Middle East more, and where Israel is tends to be a warmer climate. But there are varieties that we can grow here. I have a friend that has figs on his property. But it was very important throughout the Old Testament. Adam and Eve had figs. How do we know this? What did they make their first clothes out of when they discovered that they were naked right after sinning? They sewed together fig leaves. That's interesting because I learned this week that when you pluck a fig leaf and the little stem that's on the leaf, right up where it comes off of the branch, they call it a nodule, a whitish substance can come out of that. We would call it sap. And that substance that comes out of that can be irritating to the skin. Yet Adam and Eve tried to make full clothes out of it. Also, the fig leaf itself can be used medicinally, as can a lot of other leaves that we have lost the knowledge about. Science has taken that away from us because we can grow our own, and the scientists don't need us to make money if we have our medicine growing in our yard. But Adam and Eve had figs. Figs can be medicinal. It's shown in the Bible. Read 2 Kings 27. In fact, I'll just read that. It says, Isaiah said, take a lump of figs. And they took and laid it on the boil, and he recovered. Took the fruit, the fig fruit, made a clump of it, and used it to heal a boil. We seldom have boils in our society today. I remember my grandfather talking about boils and how painful they were and how large they could get and how they didn't have a lot of remedy for it back then. The closest thing that I can think of that I've ever had to a boil would be acne, which is not really a boil, but like a small version of one. If someone would have told me that figs would have cured my acne, I'd have put figs all over my body because I was once covered with acne as a teenager. But did you know medicine or figs could be medicinal? The Bible tells us that. Why doesn't the medical establishment use that today? They can't make money on it. Figs are used in celebration. 1 Chronicles 12:40 says, moreover, they that were nigh them, even unto Issachar and Zebulun and Naphtali, brought bread on donkeys and on camels and on mules and on oxen, and meat, meal, cakes of figs, and bunches of raisins, and wine and oil, and oxen and sheep abundantly. For there was joy in Israel. They were celebrating. Part of their celebration included lots of cakes of figs. I'm not going to read these, but I've given you the verses in your bulletins. Sometime today, go and read Proverbs 27, 17, and 18. The fig is also seen in the Song of Solomon, chapter 2 and verse 13. You can go and read these passages for yourself this afternoon. The first fig, when they start coming in season, is coveted. We do the same thing here. It's just not figs. It's tomatoes, isn't it? We're always proud of that first tomato. Stephanie raises tomatoes on the deck over there in buckets just about every year since we've been here. And we got our first one this week. I didn't want to eat it because she's the one that's done the work, planted it, raised the plant. She wouldn't eat it and made me eat it. Then I wouldn't eat it in front of her. I waited till she went to work, and it was very good. It was very enjoyable. Just a little yellow cherry-sized tomato,
Amen, brother.
but it was very good. Same thing with figs. They're very anxious to get that first fig. Why would that be? Because there's nothing like taking the fruit directly from the tree and eating it. When it's fully ripened on the tree, it is way better than anything you can buy in Kroger, Food Line, or Walmart. Doesn't matter what variety of fruit or vegetable it is always better when it comes directly from the plant to your mouth.
Amen.
Same thing with the figs. So they like the figs. They haven't had them for most of the year. And then once winter's over and spring has come, they are anxious to get that first sweet deliciousness of a fig. It's a target in war. What do you mean a target in war? Something people really like, you take it away from them in war. I was told, I don't remember if it was this past week or the week before, but we took out civilian water supplies in Iran. It was a target. It was a source of sustenance. Same thing with the figs. And it happened multiple times in the Bible. You can read it in Jeremiah, and there's other places also. The Old Testament places figs in the end times. Let me read Micah 4:4 to you. It says, "But they shall sit, every man under his vine and under his fig tree, and none shall make them afraid, for the mouth of the Lord of hosts has spoken." And then Zechariah 3:10 says, "In that day, saith the Lord of hosts, ye shall call every man his neighbor under the vine and under the fig tree." And this is talking about end times. Just because it's in the Old Testament does not mean it's something that's already happened. If you read these passages in bigger sections, you'll find out that it's talking about times of no war. We've never seen that. Yes, when I was a kid, it was a relative time of peace for the U.S., but there was still all kinds of war going on around the world. We're just insulated from it. Even though right now, the United States has been at war with Iran alongside Israel for many weeks now. We haven't felt it. The only thing we have felt is the increase at the gas pump. That's the only thing we've really felt. Why is that? Because war is different right now than it was in Bible times. It took a lot of men, typically men from every home. We've been sent to war. Every home felt it. Their wars were like our Civil War. Everybody is affected. Everybody in the land on both sides. We haven't felt that in quite some time. The Bible says a time will come when there will be no war. That even the weapons of war will be turned into plows. Stuff to work the ground so we can raise our own food, like the Bible says. Every man under his vine and fig tree. Each household will have their own source of food growing at their home. That's what it's talking about. Every man under his fig tree.
Yes, sir.
What a wonderful time that will be here on this side. Let's talk about the fig tree in the New Testament. That sounds funny, New Testament firsts. But the first thing I want to talk about is the first presentation, if you're reading your Bible cover to cover, Genesis to Revelation, in that order. You'll first come across the fig tree in Matthew 21:19 in the documents you have in your hands right now. Does anyone know what that story is? about a fig tree, but not the one he's talking about here. This is a very specific fig tree. Right. This is the one that Jesus had cursed the tree because it had no fruit. And it withered so quickly, the disciples were extremely concerned. They could not believe how quickly the leaves withered on that tree after he cursed it. And this is actually very unique because Jesus came to this tree hungry, looking for figs, and then he cursed it, but the timing was before there should have been figs. He should not have expected figs on that tree. There's more to that story. We don't have time for that today. Now, I want to talk about the first in the New Testament timeline. What's the difference between the New Testament in your book and the New Testament timeline? The timeline is the actual order of the events as they happened historically. In other words, if you read the Bible based on how the stories happened in order in history, you would not read Matthew first. You would begin with Luke and Mark, and then the orders of the stories get all intermingled of the first 4 books of the New Testament based upon when they would have happened. And the first thing we see the fig tree in the order of the New Testament time-wise happens in John 1:14. Let me read that. I'm sorry, that's not 1:14. I guess I got my fingers wrong when I typed John 1:14.
It happens, though.
What's that, brother?
It happens.
Yes, it does happen. Because the first thing that would have, John 1:14 is actually the one about the Word being made flesh and dwelling among us. That would begin Jesus' story physically here on earth. I'm not going to try to take the time, but the calling of Nathaniel. Nathaniel was called while under a fig tree. Who is Nathaniel? Nathaniel is one of the 12 disciples. And when he received his call, he was standing under a fig tree. What's unique about this is Jesus wasn't there. It was Nathaniel's brother, Philip, who did the recruiting. Kind of like other brothers in the New Testament called their brothers to come and follow Jesus. James and John. They were biological brothers. But Nathaniel went, Nathaniel went to get his brother. They didn't know that Jesus knew what was going on. But Jesus saw this event happen. Nathaniel didn't know Jesus was anywhere around. When I think of that, I think of Peter. Just before Jesus, right at the crucifixion scene, when Jesus is on trial, and Peter denies him for the 3rd time. And there's a discussion in the Bible that they can see each other. But the scene that is pictured, they should not have been able to see each other. Was that a spiritual scene? Very possible for Jesus. I'm not sure about the Peter story, but Jesus can see you wherever you are.
Yes, sir.
He knows your heart. He knows what's on your mind. And he wants to be there for you, with you, and guide you.
It's 43:51.
43:51. Thank you, brother. I don't know where I got the 114, but 43:51.
From John 1.
Yeah. John 1, verse 43 through 51 is that story. Okay. Thank you for looking that up, brother. I believe that's the first time that's ever happened while I've been preaching, so thank you very much. Let's talk about this parable of the fig tree. Jesus states this is a parable. Now, what's a parable? Anybody ever heard a parable described as an earthly story with a heavenly meaning? That's what I was taught as a young person. That's what they told me. It didn't get corrected when I went to college. To Liberty University, that they did not correct that in my teachings at Liberty. It came to me studying the Greek on my own to decipher out what parable means. What a parable actually means is a side-by-side comparison. You put two things side by side and compare them. Two different things. Young's literal translation of the Bible calls it a simile. What's a simile? A simile is two words that are similar. They're different yet similar. What a parable means, you take this story and then you compare it side by side with something else. And Jesus tells this right in the midst of teaching about end time events. End time events, he's using this. The verse after says, so likewise, when you see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. When you're seeing all these events he's talked about prior to this parable. And let me read verse 32 again. It says, now learn a parable of the fig tree. That word now. Why is that word now there? Most of the translations put that word there now. Because it's a word that gets translated in different ways. But Jesus has been telling about events that are going to happen in the future, in the prior verses. You got to put it into the context. In chapter 23 of Matthew, Jesus basically scolded and silenced the Pharisees. He got them to be quiet. They had no answers for his questions. They went silent on their own. He didn't tell them, shut up. He didn't tell them, be quiet. He didn't treat them like children. He asked them questions that they should have had answers to and had none. That's chapter 23. Then in chapter 24, Jesus begins teaching his 12 disciples. So he is no longer in front of the Pharisees and Sadducees. He has moved out away from them, and now he's teaching just his 12 disciples. Verse 9 of chapter 24 has a lot of things that he's talking about that we need to be looking for to know that the end times are right at the door. And let me read that to you. Did I get the wrong one again? It's supposed to be verse 7. I'm sorry. It was a rough week trying to type and cough and all that stuff at the same time. But this should be verse 7. All nations shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence, and earthquakes in divers places. You can get an app on your phone that will show you all the earthquakes that are happening on this earth. You can look at all of the past day. You can look at a little bit of the larger ones for the past 2 or 3 days, and it filters them out, because if you took all for 1 week, your globe map on your phone would just be completely lit up and you wouldn't be able to make out where the countries were. That's how many are happening right now. Did you know that in this past week that the southwest corner of North Carolina had an earthquake? Yeah, you didn't hear about it. They don't report on these things. Yes, it was a small one, it was a minor one. But those people that live there, that, like us, very seldom feel an earthquake, I'm sure they were a little taken aback when the earth moved under their feet. We know that wars are going on. Pestilences. You know what pestilences means? Things like plagues. For us, we call them viruses and sicknesses and cancers, things that physically affect our body. But what about famines? We are the most famine-insulated country in the world. Do you know how many days worth of food is in the grocery store that you buy your groceries in? If they stop getting supplies, how long would it be before the food runs out under normal circumstances? It's only 3 days. And John's worked at the grocery store. He should know that. That's how you learn those things, isn't it, John? They don't tell the public that. But 3 days worth of groceries is all is in your stores. My former pastor and mentor friend, who's passed on into heaven now, he hosted a missionary from Africa not long after he came to Roanoke, and he took him into a Kroger. The guy had never been inside of a Kroger before. And the guy said, "What do you pray for?" He said, "You have everything you need right here. What do you pray for?" He's from a country where they pray daily for their bread. The Lord's Prayer is a daily resuscitation for them because they want daily sustenance. We take it for granted.
Yes, we do, brother.
That is the subject of tonight's Bible study that will be held in this room right here. If you can come back, you really need to come and see what I will be presenting tonight. This and all the other descriptions are called the beginnings of sorrows. That's verse 8. All these are the beginnings of sorrows. All this is going to happen before there is worldwide sorrow and pain and suffering. Biblically, I can show you that summer is likely the last full season Christians see on earth before rapture. I didn't say this summer, but it could be. All these things are being fulfilled. We need to be turning to Jesus, and we need to be getting our friends and loved ones turning to Jesus. It's that important, folks.